Hey everybody, good morning. It is day 137 of spiritual healthcare, so welcome. It's good to see everyone. It's been a really cold past week here. I know a lot of the US right now is slammed with the cold weather that we had in Canada, so sorry about that. But yeah, it's been pretty crazy week for weather and stuff like that. So good morning to everyone. It is good to see everybody back for this week. Sorry that last week didn't work out. Galen, I woke up that morning and Galen was shedding and in a huge mess, so I had to, needless to say, I had to shut everything down and help him out. So that's what happens when you share your house with a snake, right? He's just crazy. So good morning, everybody. It's good to see all of you. We've got some really great questions, really great conversation topics today for spiritual health care, including ghosts and frequency and energy, and a really interesting question about the anniversary of people's death day, which I thought was really interesting too. So good morning to Dan and Lori and to Sally. I see all you guys coming in. It is good to see you. As I say, last week was crazy because Galen was shedding and we had crazy weather. And I know you guys are having crazy weather. Or at least a lot of you guys. You guys are all getting now what we had. We were, last week we were about minus 50 here, and up north from me, in Fort McMurray, they were minus 50 with a minus 71 wind chill, and that's Celsius, that's not Fahrenheit. So it was insane. It was crazy, but I know so many people down in Texas and places like that, you guys don't have the infrastructure, right, to deal with that. So that's really tough. So my best wishes go out to you guys. I've been thinking about you a lot. As I say, we know cold here, but we're better friends with it than people in the States. So yeah, Sally's saying it's cold in San Antonio. It snowed Sunday night and the ground is still covered in snow. Yeah, it's just not normal for it's not normal for places like Texas to be getting such a crazy amount of snow, and the power out in so many areas and things like that. It's been pretty nuts. So yeah, so as I say, my best wishes go out to all of you guys, because as I say, we know what it is to be cold here in Alberta, but I know you guys are not prepared, right? You have to be prepared for stuff like this. So anyway, some great questions that came in today or over the last week and a bit, that I think are really impactful and really good for just bringing up this discussion, because one of the questions that started it actually for me was from Linda Judd, who messaged me with a really interesting one, and all of the other questions kind of wound around this one, which was kind of cool. And what she was wondering, and it kind of, we're going to kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit, because we're going to dispel some myths today, as well as kind of bring some light to some new things and some new concepts also. And her question was that she had read that she just looked up the frequency of a ghost, and I don't know where she got this information from, but wherever the information source said, it was 18.98 hertz. And she was wondering, well, what's my frequency? Have you heard of those measurements? How does this relate to people? So this is kind of a layered question, which is why I really wanted to start with this, because it's going to bleed into a bunch of other questions that came up today about ghosts and hauntings and dead people and all sorts of stuff. So the first part of this question, I think, is one thing we have to address, because there's been a lot of information going around over the last, I would say, like 10 years or so, about the word frequency, because it's thrown around a lot, right? It's thrown around a lot. And with the emergence of the understanding of some of the quantum concepts that have come bleeding into our world now, and thanks to people like Nikola Tesla, who made it possible, but it's become a little bit more mainstream. And so the first part of this question, what is the frequency of a ghost? We don't know. And I think this is probably one of those situations where people tend to know a lot of buzzwords in this industry where they'll come out and say, you know, well, we know the frequency of this or the measurement of that. And when we see it on the ghost shows, a lot of these like ghost hunting shows and things like that, they're all using these equipment that have all these numbers on it. And the numbers seem to make sense to them for some reason, because they don't make sense to me most of the time. Because they don't, nothing really relates. So this idea of the frequency of a ghost being 18.98 hertz is just, it's not true. We don't know what a ghost is made of. And until we understand what a ghost is consisting of, we don't know what we're measuring, right? So what is the frequency? We have no idea. Interestingly enough, the numbers that I've been hearing also seem to intertwine a little bit with the concept of infrasound. And I kind of wonder if people are mistaking the idea of infrasound for the idea of the frequency of spirits. So infrasound was actually discovered by a fellow by the name of Victor Tandy, who's a lecturer at a major university. And he discovered that when things vibrate at a certain frequency, okay, when they vibrate at a certain frequency, what ends up happening is that it creates literally something called infrasound. We can't hear it, but we perceive it, and we perceive it often visually. So we start seeing things out of the corner of our eye. We start seeing shapes moving back and forth and crossing and like in and out, all sorts of stuff. So it's really interesting. So I kind of wonder if that might be where that's come from. So that being said, the frequency of people do have a frequency, but it's not something that's static, okay? So usually our frequencies in our, I would say the most important parts of the human body are located around 3 hertz to about 17 hertz, okay? So it varies. It varies. And according to, I think it's the international standard, ISO, in the vertical vibration of the human body, the sensitivity range is about 6 to 8 hertz. So we do have a frequency, like we do have a registered frequency, but it's not consistent. It's all over the place. And we forget that this stuff it's never static, right? It can vary. It could depend on, what we're doing. Brain waves, of course, work in frequency. I mean, it's endless. So I think we kind of have to take a step back from that and to realize that, our amount of knowledge about ghosts and spirits and things like that typically can be very limited. I mean, we don't have the tools to measure ghosts. We don't, because we don't know what they're made of. Probably one of the closest things that I guess you could get to something like a ghost meter would be something like a tri-field meter, which detects disruptions in electromagnetic fields around it. So it's not something you pick up and like move around. What happens is when you set the tri-field meter down, and if something passes through that field of electromagnetics, it'll go off, right? It's almost like a motion sensor. And it's probably, I guess, sort of the closest thing that you could get to something like a ghost detector. So I wanted to bring that up because it bleeds into a really great question that Dan had sent in earlier, and about a day ago, I guess. And I think this kind of all bleeds into one. And he wrote in that typically it's thought that entities take in energy such as draining batteries and cold spots in order to manifest. I have a case that shows the opposite can be true. How common are warm spots and electrical energy given off by entities? So this is a great investigation question, because I think we're used to the idea that these entities do exactly that. Like they come into a space, or there's something paranormal present in a space, and anybody that's done any investigating has experienced this, where the batteries drain, you're left with dead equipment. If any of you guys have been watching The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the season on History Channel, which is really good, they've been running into that as well. They've been running into, they get equipment onto the field from other companies, or they'll bring in a drone or something like that, and they get it out to certain spots, and boom, the batteries tank, everything quits. So I've experienced this myself. There's a school, or it used to be a school downtown here called Mackay Avenue School, and it's now a museum. And it's got a really interesting haunting. The entity there is known as Peter. It's an interesting character. It's very interesting. But the phenomenon of batteries dying and stuff like that happened all the time. I did quite a number of video shoots there with various producers and TV shows and news sites and things like that. And it's funny because we would go in and you'd have a bunch of skeptics, and they put their equipment down, which was all charged, cameras and lights and the works, and everything would just be deader than a doornail. And what we found is that this often has to do with a fluctuating electromagnetic pulse, like an EMP. And you'll see it all of a sudden just kill batteries. It'll kill whatever's in the room or whatever's in the space. And it does have to do with the electromagnetics in the space. How much it has to do with the actual entity is kind of up for debate, but it definitely has to do with things like EMPs and things like that. So the opposite of this, as Dan was talking about, is the idea that electrical energy in warm spots can be detected. And yeah, this absolutely happens. So actually a really great example of this is sometimes you'll get within haunted homes and whatnot, people reporting these balls of light that will zip around the house. You'll watch them. These aren't orbs like what you catch in photographs. That's a explainable phenomenon. We can get into that another day. But the real thing, the white bright balls of light, sometimes they come in black and blues and pinks and all sorts of things like that. Those will go zipping around, and they actually emit quite a high energy. They're usually about 10 degrees hotter than the room when you can catch them on a laser thermometer. So these warm spots will happen. People have reported, I've actually got a friend of mine who reported an entity getting into bed with him and laying down on his bed, and he could feel not only the depression in the blankets, but the warmth of this being on the bed. So yeah, this is something that totally happens. How they're generating that heat is another thing that's, we don't know, we don't understand. It may have to do with electromagnetics as well, but we don't really get it. So yeah, can it happen? Absolutely. And I think people dwell on the things like cold spots and the draining of energy and the draining of batteries, because I think it fits the horror theme a little bit more. And oftentimes these cold drops are associated with negative entities. And I've noted that for years in my work. Sometimes what will happen is you'll get a negative entity in the space, and because they usually are trying to get you out of their space, they're trying to say, go away, I don't want you here. They'll do things like severely drop the temperature, try to freeze you out of a space, try to smell you out of a space. we did a investigation years ago to this great big mansion here in Edmonton. It was an old historical mansion, and the negative entity there was it didn't like people, and it was not happy with the new owner coming in. And it was funny because the owner was actually at the time was responsible for some of the renovations and overseeing some of the renovations at one of our big historical theaters here. And the entity had actually one morning, she got up to go get her schematics, and it had eaten the schematics. It had just ripped it to shreds. And so she literally had to go in and say, the ghost ate my homework, which didn't go over very well. But it would turn around, and you'd go into a space where it didn't want you, and the smell of cat urine would just permeate the air. It was just horrible. So the smell of things that people don't like and whatnot, that usually is the problem. So they'll come up with all sorts of ways to get you out. They're kind of like Sasquatch, where Sasquatch will throw rocks at you and scream. The negative entities usually will turn around and create horrible, really bad smells, or they'll do all sorts of things. But temperature drops is one of them. So it's that has happened to me a number of times. So So there you go. So yeah, totally possible. Will they give off, different temperatures, heat, all of that? I've had it happen. As I say, what causes it? Don't know. But it does happen, and it's consistent with patterns of behavior. So often with paranormal phenomenon, especially when it comes to entities, Stephanie and I learned this really early on, is that it's sometimes you have to let go of the how and take a look at the why. And that's how we developed our program Teaching the Living, was because when we start to look at the why and the cause and effect, you start to see the patterns of behavior rather than trying to dig in and trying to figure out how is it doing it. Well, we don't know yet, we don't know. So yeah, so I hope that helps. So the other question that I really wanted to get at today is another one actually from Dan that he sent in a little while ago that I didn't get a chance to get to last week, because last week, as I say, Galen was shedding and everything just was put on hold because Galen was shedding. So, but I thought this was a really, really great concept and question, because I think a lot of people do this, and I've noticed since I read this question, this is kind of funny. Since I read this question, I've been noticing it on Facebook and people posting about this, which is the anniversary of people's death and celebrating the day of their death. So good morning, first of all, to everybody who's now joined us. Hey, Des, and Kaz, and everybody who's joined us that I didn't get to say hello to earlier. So glad you guys are here. And so the anniversary of the death thing is interesting, because people will post, this is the anniversary of the day this person died, and I can't get happy, and I'm we mark this day on the calendar every single year. And what's interesting is that I find that the people that celebrate this aspect of things, and maybe some of you guys do it too, is that they usually do not celebrate the person's birthday when it comes around, or they don't celebrate the other side of it. They are really focused on that one day that person passed away. Like they very, very focused on it. And usually celebrating the anniversary of the death is not a positive thing for like 99% of people. If you're the 0.1% and 1%, then that's cool. Have at it. But most people don't do it because it's helping them in any sort of emotional way. It's actually usually revisiting the day that was traumatizing, which is not helpful. It is not helpful. So I've heard various reasons as to why people do this. I've heard that, if they grieve longer, for instance, then, well, it means that they really love this person, or that they've, they don't want to forget that, because if they forget that, then they're forgetting the person, this kind of thing. If we forget their death, then we forget the person. It can be very complex emotionally with a lot of people, and why they perpetuate on celebrating the day of somebody's death. But here's my advice to those of you who either know somebody who does that, or maybe you do it yourself, or I don't know, is that what I've learned throughout my years of doing the paranormal work and spiritual work and all of that kind of thing, and having lost quite a number of people myself, to non-physical. I guess lost is the wrong word, but had made their transition to non-physical, is that one day, and continuously focusing on that one day really is, in a lot of ways, doing a disservice to the rest of their life, right? So if you've got somebody, say they were 50 years old and they pass away, and you're focused on that day that they died, okay, well, you've just negated the last 50 years that they've been around, and that you shared with them, the laughter you shared with them, the fun that you shared with them, all of those things. And, if you're stuck and hung up on that one day, and it's usually not even a day, sometimes it could be like a number of moments where that person made their transition, then you end up sort of hung up on something that's holding you apart from remaking and reconnecting with that person who is now in non-physical. They've not disappeared. they've changed form. They've shifted into a new form. They're in a new form of non-physical reality, but they are connected with us. And when we hang on to that one day, that one moment, those few hours, then we're negating not only what they've lived, but we're now negating our ability to connect with them now. So it really is kind of a double whammy when we're really hung up on, oh, we have to be terribly, terribly sad and continue to repeat the day that they passed away over and over again. So one of the things that I tell clients, because I've dealt with so many clients that have struggled with this concept, because it's a big concept, especially if you've just had somebody pass away recently. And I know a lot of people have, especially with the pandemic and things like that going on. It's something where a lot of people know someone, right, who has passed away. But one thing that I've really realized over the years is that the one thing, and various research can confirm this as well, that these entities, these people who are now in pure positive energy again, they have no interest in their legacy with you being one of sadness. They really don't. And we have to begin as people to ask ourselves, what legacy did that person intend to leave? Did they intend to leave a legacy where every time you think of them, you think of the day that they died and you're sad? Or did they intend to leave a legacy where you think back on them and remember the fun and remember the laughter and connect with them through those memories, through that joy, and rebuilding that connection again? And I think a lot of people, that's really the question, that's the turning point for them around this kind of anniversary of death day, where we really have to ask ourselves, is that the way that person really wanted you to hang on to their memory? And most of the time, I think the answer is no. We, even when it comes to the people who passed away on the grumpy side, because a lot of people say, oh, they're just, they're miserable in life, so they're miserable in death, and that's just not true. They let go of all of that when they make their transition over. That's just gone. People get hung up on the idea that these negative entities are people. They're not. It's another phenomenon completely. But they really don't want their legacy to be one of misery for the most part. They definitely, I don't think, want their loved ones to be sad once they have moved over. And if you're dealing with a death or somebody making their transition, who was just terrible, because we know a few. The people that, especially, people with personality disorders, anything like that. I mean, they'll be horrible right up to the moment they're dead, like straight up, like they will be straight up terrible, to the point where psychologists will often tell you, don't go visit these people even on their deathbed, because they're going to use that time to manipulate. If anybody ever watched the series King of the Hill when it was on, I love that show. It was one of my favorite shows. The father or the grandfather in that show, his name was Cotton Hill. He's an old military guy and whatever. And the even till his deathbed, he was abusing his son and manipulated his son right up until the moment he flatlined in the hospital. It was crazy. So there's definitely people that are out there that are like that. But once they move into that non-physical energy, once they move into that, that's not there anymore. That's ego. That ego doesn't go with them. That ego stays where it is. That's not them, right? That's not who they are. That's not the core of who they are. Their inner being is not that, right? It's not that. It's something else. So when they move back into pure positive energy, that person is not there. Sometimes people, when they sit down with somebody from, like a medium from the Forever Family Foundation or the Windbridge Institute or anything like that, and they want to reconnect with these people that maybe gave them trouble in life, they find that they're dealing with someone who is the total opposite of who they were. And they automatically think, well, this isn't right. Like, this person was grumpy and annoying and irritating and mean and all of these things, and now they're not. Now they've got wisdom, and they're connected, and they're like, what's going on? You didn't know my loved one. You didn't know who this guy was. And it turns out, no, like that, what we're now dealing with is who they really are, is the connected part of who they are, which was in there somewhere. So it doesn't always show up in the physical sometimes. But the connected part of who they are is there. And, when we're in life, and there's like this, the more, the crappier we are in maintaining our connection, the nastier we tend to get, right? The bigger that gap becomes, the more we disconnect from our inner being and who we are on the inside, spirit-wise. And the more disconnected we get, the nastier we get, and the more depressed we get, or whatever that is on the emotional spectrum for that person. So there's lots of factors that go in, but the idea, I think, of celebrating the day somebody died, I think cheapens the quality of which most people live. And most people, they have done quite a lot in their life. Like each one of you guys, if you guys write down the people that you have in your experience, and if you turn around and tell them how have I impacted you, even just the little things, I think you guys would be surprised at what their answers would be, and when they think of you, and the legacy that you're already leaving. Legacy doesn't mean an empire. It doesn't mean riches. It doesn't mean, I have to make, I'm going to be Steve Jobs and leave this, I'm leave Apple to the world, right? A legacy can be something that is emotional but impactful. And I think that's something people don't often think about, even just going through their day-to-day life, is, what am I leaving? What legacy is there here that I am imparting on people around me? And I think many of us don't really consider that really is a thing. But I guarantee you, if you ask yourself now, not one of you guys is going to say, oh, I wanted my loved ones to be in misery and pain and celebrate the day of my death. Like, none of you are going to say that. And if you do, well, you're a special type of sadist or something. I don't know. But no, I mean, you don't want to be hanging on to that. Even when we look at things like Mexico's Day of the Dead, it's very different. It's celebrating non-physical. It's such a party. It's celebrating, transition and spirits and all of those things. It's such a great event. And so even these cultures that, will celebrate spirit and the transition and all of that, it's very different than celebrating like the anniversary of somebody's death and then being upset about it for a day. If you're one of those people and you're trying to move from that, and move away from that habit and move away from those emotions, what I would recommend is being able to, first of all, start celebrating something like their birthday instead, in place of that, something that you have good memories around. And I would start picking out things that maybe you did together, or something that you were engaged with them, and start replacing those few moments of their death with things that you want to celebrate and remember, that are something that is positive, and something that you can revel in and enjoy. Because otherwise it's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And in the long term, it's just going to separate you from them. It separates you from your connection, which separates you from everything that you want, right, to create. And it just doesn't work. So I found a really, really great piece about this in The Astonishing Power of Emotions by Jerry and Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks. And I wanted to read a little bit from this for you guys today. For those of you guys who don't know the works of Abraham is a channeled group of entities who use the channel of a wonderful lady by the name of Esther Hicks. Her husband Jerry actually made his transition, and she had to deal with that. And but it's the phenomenal work these people do. So I wanted to read this, a little bit of this, so you guys can check this out. This is cool. We want to give you a very brief vision and version of the big picture to help you understand that you were source energy before you came into this physical body, and that you still are source energy even though you are now in this physical body. Now, that's something most humans don't really consciously acknowledge. They think, oh, I hope there's something before this. And even more, I hope there will be something after this. But few understand that you are non-physically and physically focused at the same time. And that both of those perspectives are active vibrations within you at all times. You are not dead or alive. In fact, you're never dead. You're always alive and alive. And so you come forth from non-physical, focused into this physical body, and by your attention to different subjects, you activate vibrational frequencies within you. And the vibrational frequency that you activate is a result of what you're giving your attention to now, and is having a vibrational feedback from the perspective of source within you. Brilliantly put, and again, ties back into our concept of frequency that we started off in when we first started get going on this subject. And we have to remember that things, of course, the question came up, this idea of frequency and this idea of emotions and, what frequency is the human body and things like that. And this is why I said at the beginning that the idea of frequency gets very, very intertwined and very jumbled, because everything has a frequency. Your heart has a frequency. Your physical body, your emotions will generate frequencies in your brain. You've got your thoughts will generate frequency. Everything, and it changes. And when we get into things like non-physical, and we get into things like spirits and things like that, you could probably put a bet on the fact that their frequency probably changes too, which again, we don't know, because we don't know what ghosts are made of at this point. I think science is getting a little closer, but it's still a ways away. And until we can do that, we can't really measure it. All we can do is, look at the why, let go of the how for now, because we don't have that information. And begin to tend to our own vibrational stance, and begin to tend to our own state of being, because that is what we have control over. So as I say, celebrate the loved ones who have passed away, good morning, Christy. To be able to celebrate those who have passed away in a productive way. It doesn't mean that you're not going to grieve. It doesn't mean that it's going to get any easier. But it does mean that we get to choose how we're going to engage and remember these people. And of course, with the pandemic, and a lot of people have lost their lives to this, or have come close to it. I suspect that soon we're probably going to be hearing an influx of cases of NDEs, near-death experiences, I'm guessing. So that could be very interesting over the next number of years, to see if there's a spike and an increase in things like that. We'll find out. But it's a journey. Either way, it's a journey. So I hope that was answering a few questions today. I know I've got kind of a backlog of questions because of missing last week, but we'll get to them. We're just piecing them out. We'll get to all of them. You guys always write in with some really interesting stuff, and so don't stop doing that. A lot of these questions, they make me think. I think they make the public think, and it's so valuable. It's so valuable to continue to have these conversations and discussions. I'm hoping to get some online live events that are going to be ticketed live events in the next number of months here. Hopefully by the summer for sure. And hopefully you guys will be able to come and attend that virtually, because I know a lot of you guys aren't in Alberta, so which isn't such a bad thing. But I'm hoping to get some of those up and running in regards to sort of spiritual health care, in regards to a whole bunch of different things. I'm eyeing some venues right now, and in both Alberta and Vancouver. So we'll see what happens. But I think it'll be really good. And if you guys are interested in that, please let me know. I'm gonna make sure the tickets are super affordable so that everybody can join in. Yeah, let me know if you guys are interested in doing something like that, because I think it would be really, really neat to watch that side of things expand and be able to go to some interesting and new places with you guys, and take this further than even what we have right now. So so anyway, Marge is saying, yeah, the baby in the house rules right now. Yeah, no kidding. You have an excuse. As I say, that was me last week with Galen, because he shed and the world stopped. So I get it. I get it. It's just things you have to do. There's just stuff you got to do. So anyway, you guys, I've been posting a little bit more of my art and stuff lately. I posted a picture of, actually, maybe do I have it in my sketchbook here? I do. So I posted this a little bit ago. I've been playing around with some new art and pens and stuff. And so my dear friend Matt Spearin, who, for those of you guys who have my book, in chapter 7, there's a story about the Wendigo in Alberta and his story. And so I ended up the other day, I don't know if you guys saw, I posted this on Facebook. So this was Matt's description, like of the Wendigo that he saw, that he struggled with for years through his childhood. And so he wanted me to do another picture. There's a picture in the book as well of it that I painted, because he really wanted me to put it on paper so people would understand what he was seeing, or had seen, and so many other people have seen. So that's basically the new one, and I'll keep posting some more of these on as I go on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. So if you're not following me on Instagram, by the way, it's always a bit of an adventure. I post a lot of my art there that I don't post on the EntitySeeker page. So I'm moving that over, and there's a new fire video that's going to be coming out too in the next number of weeks called Little Bird. So my partner and I have been working on that, and it's pretty cool. So anyway, it is time for some peace affirmations. I will stop rambling, and we got to get to those before we go into our week. So everybody take a breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I'm able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all of the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I'm able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody take a breath. Thank you guys for another week of spiritual health care. I hope it was interesting. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'm going to be putting a lot more fire content and stuff like that on there. So it's youtube.com/EntitySeeker. And it's coming along. It's coming along. I'm starting to like pad it out a little bit and whatever. I'm gonna have a new article coming out in the next little while from the Superstitious Times on Mackay Avenue School. That should be out, I'm guessing, this month. And once it's out, I'll post it. It was a really great article with who's now a friend of mine, Brian Baker, a really great journalist. and he's out of Toronto. And he's also got an article in the upcoming issue, this issue, like coming out this month, of a Haunted magazine. So that should be really, really good as well. If you guys haven't subscribed to that, it's really worth it. You can get it digitally or you can get a print copy, and it's at haunteddigitalmagazine.com. And it's a bloody fantastic magazine. The article I did for this particular issue is about psychics and people's addictions to them, and how we can break those addictions and start realizing, creating our experience, and how probability works and all of those things. It's really cool. And I know there's going to be awesome articles from Richard E. Stepp and Katie Waller and all Penny Griffiths Morgan and all friends that are contributing, and of course Brian Baker as well. So it's going to be a really, really good issue. I am excited about it, but I will see you guys next week, next Wednesday, for more spiritual healthcare. Thank you guys so much for coming every week. It's so much fun, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. Okay, everybody? Bye, guys.